And although I read Pat Karn's books and I learned from a lot of experts, the opportunity to interact with one was rare. And so what we're doing here, Tammy and I, is offering you the opportunity to ask any question you want, completely anonymously, about sex addiction, love addiction, porn addiction, codependency, relationship addiction, all those things. And we will answer them for you one at a time. And please put your questions in the Q&A and we will answer them. And I do a bunch of other things like this, but this is one of the few that are actually completely anonymous. This is like it's the only one I do this anonymous completely. So that you can just ask questions and not worried about anybody knowing who you are or what your deal is. And Tammy, I think we have a question.
We have a question, so we'll get started. This is being recorded, just so you know. This is being recorded. You will remain anonymous. The questions will be asked in a way so that you continue to be anonymous, but this is recorded so that those unable to join us live can view this later. My first discovery day was catching him sexting another woman on Facebook. Over a year and a half later, he accuses me of catfishing him and has issues with this, although it was not me. I think he does this seeking to absolve his guilt. Recently, he pleaded with me to confess to that woman being me so he could move forward with his recovery. I was astounded at this, lots of exclamation points. This particular incident is a major, all caps, trigger for me on a daily due to the things he said to her. And secondly, why in the hell does it matter? Even if it was me, he still sent the pics and accepted the pics she sent and said the things that he said to her. He implicates that he can't progress in his recovery if I don't say, yes, it was me. Please help me figure out his mindset on this, Dr. Rob. I thought we were doing okay, slowly but okay, and then this.
So Tammy, I think it feels like there might have been something, a first part to this question that we didn't get. Or maybe this is someone who's been here before and asked questions before.
It is. Yes.
So I think the question is kind of like, why is it so important to your spouse that you agree with a lie, that you agree with something that isn't true? And, you know, I think it's very dangerous ground, actually, for this particular issue. I'm glad that you brought it up. I'll tell you how this can go. And Tam, I don't know if I ever told you this, but many years ago, probably 20, a woman came into treatment and she said she was a sex addict and that she had done all these terrible things and she was ruining her marriage and all of that. And so we took her in treatment. And what we came to find out in about a week is that her husband, his pathological jealousy and his fear around and his abuse was so profound that he had convinced her that maybe she was going crazy because he was absolutely certain that she was having sexualized people and doing all these things, and there just was no evidence of it. But in order to, he constantly was yammering at her and complaining to her, and, you know, just, I think, like you, he was maybe a little more troubled, but eventually she started, believe it or not, thinking, well, maybe I did do that thing, you know. And so it is extremely important for spouses to keep your eyes on your own reality. You know, what you know is true, what you feel is true, and if it isn't true, it'll get proven later. But you don't certainly have any reason to believe anything anyone's saying to you right now. And if something doesn't feel right, it ain't right. If it doesn't smell right, it ain't right. The thing about relationships and early recovery is I think it's a lot about really being honest, really trusting your gut, really believing that, you know, as long as you're both in this together, then any blips that come along should be able to work through. So this is upsetting to me for you. You're saying, and I don't know if that's absolutely true, what you're saying is that you guys were doing well, and then you may have caught your spouse re-engaging someone online, and then he's just so committed to denying it, maybe to himself. You know, maybe he'd have to give up his time or his sobriety, and he doesn't want to. You know, I don't know what it means to him, but I do know what it means to me and for you is that you absolutely have to stand in your truth and say, I don't want anything to do with this craziness, you know, and that's what it is. It's craziness. You know, I don't know anything about that. I don't know why it came to you. I don't know why you were involved in it or whatever, but considering your history, I'm sure it happened and I was there and I believe it. And I want you to stop telling me that somehow it's my responsibility because otherwise you will lose your mind. Even the fact that you said he sent the pics, what the hell does it matter if it was me? You clearly see all that, but then you say he can't progress in recovery until okay. My recovery is never contingent on what my spouse thinks or does. My progress and my recovery is never contingent on what my affair partner, it doesn't matter. My recovery is for me. If I want to get well and I want to live a better life, I do that no matter whether you leave me, love me, whatever you're doing, I'm doing that for me. And there isn't anything that you can do to hold up my recovery. I may be sad about things you do or hurt about things you do, but I'm never going to be able to hurt your recovery. So, or you're never going to hurt my recovery. So, because that's my commitment to myself. I may have started out doing it for you, but ultimately it's my commitment to yourself. And when I see an addict looking at their spouse saying things like, I can't feel good about my recovery until there's a smile on your face, that's a problem, because it's not your job as a spouse or a partner or a loved one to give him the reason in the morning to get up in the day and recover. That's something he needs to find for himself. And if he's lucky, he might find out that you're part of the reason he gets up in the morning and gets into recovery. But you're certainly not the reason. You certainly can't sign on to anything that doesn't feel true to you. And to do so would be to disrespect yourself. What does it mean for him? I can't say. I think that first you have to get through what the hell's going on here before you can get to what it means. And I think you are hedging with what the hell's going on here. I'm not sure why, but it wouldn't be me. I'd be, let's sit down and talk about this now. Do you want to sit down with you, me, and your sponsor? You want to sit down with you, me, and your therapist? Who would you like to sit down with? Because I don't want this to just be you and me, because clearly there's some distortion here, and I think I got it right. And then have a third party there and have that conversation. It'll either drive your relationship forward or it won't. Thanks, Tammy. That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, someone asked, I have to say in the chat, someone did say, would he be narcissistic? So all addicts are narcissistic when they're, just want to say that, when they're in the process of seeking addiction. I mean, if you think about it, let's say there's a heroin addict who spends all his kids' college funds buying drugs. That guy, when sober, may work 4 jobs trying to get the money back in the college bank account, meaning when I am focused on my drugs, my sex, I just want life to be quiet so I can go do what I want to do. And as long as my life doesn't get in the way of my addiction, I'm in good shape. So yes, when I am in the active flow of an addiction, I'm absolutely narcissistic, because narcissistic means I'm on the center of the universe and the only one that matters and comes first is me. And if I'm in a relationship with drugs or sex, and that's my primary relationship, then I'm going to be narcissistic to everyone else, because the only thing that matters to me primary is my relationship with the drugs or the sex. So yeah, narcissism is endemic to addiction, but it doesn't mean that every addict is ultimately a narcissist.
So here's a question for you. Is it normal to act out worse after connecting with people? Background, this person was on the drop-in group last night, and then immediately afterward acted out till 3 in the morning. Then today had a very nice call with a guy from the group, then acted out for hours this afternoon. Why is connecting not seeming to help?
Well, this is I'm really glad you asked that question, because we talk so much about connection here. And I don't know if this relates to you or not, but I often think of stories that come into my head when I read a particular question. Tammy, when you read that question, I was thinking, I remember one of my sponsors, I don't know if you relate, in fact, you think you probably do relate to this, Tammy, but I remember my sponsor saying to me many years ago, the person I looked up to in recovery and was helping me, he said, you know, I'm the guy who just never wants to leave the party. I want to be the last guy to leave the party because I never want to miss a single minute of what happens. And so I'll always be the guy. And the reason I guess I thought of that is that connection is the thing that grounds us and stabilizes us and leaves us less likely to act out, unless the connection you experience, unless the ending of that connection is the difficult part for you. So, for example, my friend, the reason I brought him up is he was great at the party. He just never wanted to leave. He never wanted to be alone. He never wanted to be the guy not at the party. And he certainly didn't want to be the... So, you know, I remember very frequently, and I hear this all the time, sex and love addicts and drug addicts going to a retreat where they get all the support and all this nurturing, or they go to a workshop, and then they come back and act out. And they're like, wait a minute, I learned all this stuff. I had all this connection. Why did I act out? Generally, the answer has something to do with, I really enjoyed the safety of that connection, that relationship, but the separation from it left me feeling really alone. And if you're in sobriety and you're really starting to pick up on connecting to people, you're also going to be picking up on what it's like to be disconnected. Because when we are acting out all the time, we're not feeling either one. We're not feeling our need to connect, nor do we really feel much about disconnection. But boy, when you don't have that, when you don't have masturbation and porn and sex and love, it, all that crazy stuff to distract yourself with, it's not unusual for us to find out that we are deeply needful people. And when we move to start connecting with someone, it actually stirs up all of our needs. You know, when I connect with someone, I start to, especially if it's a good connection, I need more. I want more. It's like my friend at the party. I want more connection, more, you know, and that's part of being an addict and also part of how needful we are. The problem is for some of us, when the connection goes away, there's a part of us that gets despairing. There's a part of us that says, fuck it, I don't care. I don't know that this is, from what you described, conscious, but I think, boy, this is a great thing for you to work on. Like, now that you know that this is a trigger for you, wow, what's it like if you don't go and do that thing? And what's it like if you consistently push yourself to engage and then disengage in a healthy way, go have a wonderful evening with friends or a week at whatever, and then sit by yourself and tolerate that incredible discomfort? You might have to pick up the phone and call someone. You might have to say to one of these people, you know what? I feel so connected to you guys that when I leave, that's when I most want to act out. And so that's when I need the most support, when I'm disconnecting from people, because I'm finally getting the longed for thing I've always wanted: comfort, support, nurturing, interesting people, engaging. And now that's, you know, even if that leaves for 10 minutes or an hour, it can feel like I'm all alone again. Like my sponsor would go to a party and he'd want to act out afterward, or go to a retreat and want to act out afterward, because the connection is what made him thrive, but the disconnection is what made him want to act out. And I don't know if that's your experience, but what it would speak to is the issue of abandonment. That separation and abandonment is very, very difficult for you. And that means you have to be really thoughtful about how you disengage with people and monitoring yourself. I do say, what I didn't hear in your email, and I would like, or text, and what I would love to have heard, and I would hope to hear in the future is, so I got off Forrest, or, Forrest is a gentleman who does one of our relationship workshops.
It's a drop-in group on Sunday night for men. Mm-hmm.
So, Forrest is good. I mean, he brings a really good group of people together. You guys feel good and connected and warm. My question is, what did you do when you felt like acting out? You had all those people you just engaged with. Did you have any of their email addresses? Did you have any of their phone numbers? You know, what did you do? I would like to hear that I wanted to act out, but I didn't. I did this instead. Now we know this is a trigger for you. Getting close to people, separation. Great. Don't need to know anything more than that. How are you going to work with this so that doesn't happen? And then we can talk about what's on the other side of it. But first you need to get through it.
Yeah, I was thinking too how it could be, because addiction is such a isolation that connecting with people has to feel foreign. So even just the difficulty and uncomfortableness of connecting. But I like what you were saying, and I hadn't thought about it being at the point of disconnect. Yeah. You know, I was thinking even in the discomfort of like, oh my gosh, this is intense or whatever. And now that it's done, now I need to go, I need to go escape. So, and I don't know, which is true, but and both could be true. I don't know, but yeah, I really like that you're thinking, okay, if this is a trigger for me, what am I going to have as my plan to counteract that? And, whether it's calling somebody else or it's listening to a podcast or watching one of these webinars, whatever it is, but get a plan to help with that in between.
And, I had a client years ago who used to have to do couch duty, meaning that he'd go to a meeting on a Sunday night or something, and he could not be alone after. It brought up feeling. And that's something else we haven't said also. Despite the fact that this was a useful conversation that you sat in group, or you had a nice talk with your sponsor, some of the things you talk about may stir you up more than you think. The things that get talked about in these online groups can be very challenging emotionally, and it may well be, and we're not particularly good at assessing when we're having strong emotions until we already want to act out. So here's what I can tell you. The desire to act out is information. As long as you don't act on it, it's information. It could be information about loneliness. It could be information about stress. It could be information about being hungry. But it's information. If you treat it as, oh, okay, now I just need to go have sex, you're not really getting the message. There's a message in there. Your desire to act out is your desire to escape. So what is it you're trying to escape from? Or two. Yeah, all good stuff. We have more questions?
Yes, we do. My ex has re-engaged with me after 2 months of no contact. We have a highly charged sexual relationship,
Mm.
but have great conversations and do activities, cooking together, etc. He needs a lot of space and feels flooded. I believe he uses sex as a major way to connect, but then also goes anorexic. He wants me in his life, told me he freaks out and leaves standard model relationships, so he wants to try something new, expectation free, great friends who have undefined relationship that is monogamous but not with a specific goal in mind. I think relationships scare the crap out of him, and they do me too. I'm more love addict. Is more love avoidant. Does this sound like a way two people negotiating their fears of intimacy, or a slippery slope?
So tell me, what do you think? I just have a question. This person said, I think it's a woman, should we have a
It is.
charged sexual relationship? Which to me, that would mean a hot sexual relationship, like a
Yes.
really good sexual
Yes. Yeah.
relationship. And then, well, highly charged, but then she says, but have great conversations. So what you're saying is, despite the fact that you have a good sex life, okay, this is called health.
Yes.
Health, Health, health. When you're sexually attracted to someone, you enjoy being sexual with them and you enjoy doing things with them. That's called health. Good job. Okay, but he uses sex as a way to connect. All men use sex as a way to connect, just to say it. He wants me in his life. He tells me he freaks out. I don't understand what standard model relationship. I think what you're saying is that you would like to have a consistent, clear relationship that is headed in a particular direction. And this person is saying, I like what we're doing and I like being with you, but I kind of don't want to get too tied down. I don't want to put too many labels or lines around relationships. So I just want to say, again, men have been doing this since the dawn of time. And women have been saying, I'm sorry, but I need definition. And men have been saying, I don't want to define it. So Tammy remembers the 60s and 70s. So this is not a new issue. But for addicts in particular, first of all, are you a love addict? To me, someone who's, I don't really, the term is kind of I don't think anyone's really addicted to love, but to be addicted to a situation where your needs aren't getting met and you keep chasing someone hoping that they will meet them, that I understand as love addiction. And so your question is, I'm pursuer. He likes being pursued. Will that work for us? So I think in every relationship, there needs to be a little bit of that. Not to the point of I'm running away or don't want to be in the relationship, but for some of us, I mean, I like being caught. I don't mean caught doing bad things. I mean, I like to be noticed. I like to be important. I like to, I think that, how do I say all of this? So
You're doing great. Keep going.
You're running into the typical fears of being typical fears of a male avoidant. And it doesn't mean anything until you learn that he really doesn't want to have a more significant relationship. Then my concerns run to you, which is if I were having good sex with someone and I was having great conversations and doing activities and cooking and having fun together, I would want that to grow into more. And I just want to tell you honestly, I was married for four years. I was with someone for 4 years, unmarried, in early recovery in the 90s, right around the time I got out of graduate school. And this was the most, without question, painful relationship of my life ever. And I still, in some ways, have not fully gotten over it. It was the love of my life, the most fun I ever had, but this person would not and could not commit. And what made it painful for me is we'd have these wonderful times together. Like we'd spend a weekend together, we'd do all this fun stuff. And I would say stuff like, oh, we're really getting along. We should live together, or we should spend more time together. Or and he would say things like, well, but I'm not really sure. Just because we had a good time, it doesn't mean we're going to stay together. I mean, so every time I moved forward, he would move back. And that is fun for a little while, a year, maybe long. But once you get into a couple of years in a relationship, at least for me, and I don't know about you, I actually want things to go somewhere. I don't want to waste my time with someone who wants to have fun. I want to get married. I want to have a commitment. I want to have a home and family and friends, whatever that means to you. I think on some level, most of us do. So I think there's a very basic thing to check out here before you get into how fun your sex life is and how great you get along or any of that stuff. Do you have the same goals in a relationship? If your goal is to be committed, to get involved, to deepen, to live with, to maybe get married or have kids or whatever, if that's what you want, and I hope you do, if that's what you want, maybe that's not what he wants. And if that's the case, why are you in a relationship with him? Because you have different goals. Now you may say, oh, well, the loving's good when it's there. And I'm going to say to you, you know what? I've sat in marital counseling. I know what it's like when the counselor says there are certain basic things that you need to have in common for a relationship to work. One of them, for example, is, well, do you want to have kids? If one person does and the other person doesn't matter the gender, it's going to be a really tough marriage because one person's going to feel like they're missing out on something deeply important in life. The other person's feeling like, why are you bugging me? I never wanted to have kids in the first place. That is not a way to enter a relationship. Monogamy is another thing you kind of need to decide as you're, or at least 4 or 5 years in, people make their decisions. But playing with things and not defining them is, for us, painful and not unlikely to lead. I have to tell you that it took me dragging this person 4 years in a relationship, lots of love, friends everywhere. We had a great relationship, I thought. Could never really pin him down. Finally got him into therapy and asked that question. Are we going, what's happening with our relationship? Are we going to buy a home? And he said to me, you'll love this. Well, that's just you, Rob, having to pin everything down and get all the answers. And you're always doing that to me. And it would have been my likely self to say, oh gosh, you're right, I shouldn't do. But I had a good therapist in that room for this particular couple session. And this was the end of my relationship because that therapist simply turned to my spouse and said, I think after 4 years with you, he has a right to know, do you want to build a home? Do you want to get married? It is a reasonable question. You need to answer it. And the answer from this man I spent 4 years with was no. Devastated me. It devastated me because everything emotionally about the relationship told me it was good. But when I tried to actually move it forward, it simply wasn't possible. Now, I'll tell you a little secret about this particular relationship because I still know enough about where this man is in life we still share friends. This man has not had a relationship in 25 years since we were dating. He has been single. He is now 60. He is still single. He's always been single. The longest relationship he ever had was with me. So while I was turning myself inside out to be the person that maybe could make this work somehow, the truth was this is never someone who was going to be able to love me. And he showed me it over and over again. I just didn't want to hear it. Because I thought, well, when things are this good and we're having so much fun and what we all will want is to, move forward. And well, maybe some of us want that, but not everybody. And some of us want that with us and some of us not with us. So I think the most important thing for what I hear here is it's like, do you two want to have kids or not? What kind of relationship are you looking for? And if it's very different in a short and long term than what this man is looking for, you shouldn't be dating because you're leading yourself down a path that's going to hurt a lot later. And he's going to look around saying, I told you all along. And you're going to say, yeah, I just didn't want to hear it. So listen and find out more before you invest more is my answer to you. And by the way, being an active love addicts are the people who don't ask the question. I just don't want to know. Everything's fine now. I'm sure whatever he says, we'll work it out. And if I'm just more loving, more sweet, if we have more good times, then it's going to work out. I thought that too. I thought if I'm loving, if we had a lot of good times, what I didn't realize, this person was from day one never going to be able to commit to me. And he knew it in ways that I didn't. It took a professional to sort that out for us. I'm so grateful. Because now I've been in a relationship for 20 years. It was never me. I'm difficult. There were things. But the desire to connect, the desire to grow and live together and build a family, I had every right to want that. And it was not on me in any way that I wasn't getting it. It was about the person I was with. So.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing, Rob.
No, seriously, that was really powerful. So.
Oh, okay. I loved him. I wanted to die after that was over because I gave my best to that relationship, but I couldn't figure out if I give my best and we love each other. It never occurred to me there are some people who just can't make it work no matter how hard they try, and it isn't about me at all. And that's the hard, especially when you got a spouse who's saying to you, "Oh, well, you want too much, you demand too much, you're always asking for too much," as avoidant people tend to do. He should be thanking you for pulling him toward you, not blaming you for pushing him away. Okay, I'm done.
So I just have a follow-up question to that. So there are avoidant people that can be pulled in. So is there, like with the person that you really loved and cared about, he clearly just wasn't willing to do the work, but there are people that
It wasn't even the
Ken,
work. He did not want to have a committed relationship with me over time. I think then he would have said it was about us. I think now he would say, I think I'm someone who just doesn't want to have a relationship. But he couldn't tell me that then because he
yeah,
didn't have enough experience of himself.
okay. So the next one, I'm a betrayed spouse of a porn addict in the thick of denial. I'm aware of betrayal trauma and the related crazy behavior, in quotes. I'm working with a CSAT, my hubby is not, to try to get through this. I'm struggling to stop doing is snooping. I'm triggered by everything at this point. He's avoiding me like the plague. We are divorcing. He initiated and we are still living together with our infant child. Him not telling me anything is driving me crazy. I know I should let go since we're divorcing anyway, but still love him, make things work. Is there anything I can do concretely to avoid this behavior?
Well, no, not really, because you love this person and they're not available to you. And now they're pulling away from you and they're still involved with something that is some bright, shiny object that, but here's the deal. And I want to say this to you with true love and sincerity. If you're divorcing, then what this man does with his time is none of your business. He gets to look at porn, he gets to see prostitute, he can do whatever he wants. Now, while he's living with you and your child, that's a different issue. I would have rules and boundaries around that. But ultimately, I think you have to accept the fact that someone who says, I don't want to be with you, I mean, I'd accept it. They get to do whatever they want to do. Maybe not in my home in front of my child, but they get to do whatever they want to do. And I also want to say to you that you're grieving. Oh my God, you're the mother of this man's child. And he doesn't want to be with you? What's wrong with him? He doesn't want to be with you or his child? That's a deeply troubled man. I mean, unless you're a monster, and I doubt it, unless your child, that is one of the most special, precious, anyway, it makes me very sad. It makes me very sad that he doesn't want to be that person for you and your child, and even more sad that you would blame yourself in any way for wanting to understand it. Because what snooping is, what detective work is, what all of that stuff is, it's really the spouse is trying to reassure themselves. Do I know everything? Have I got a handle on this? Is there more that I don't know? It's really an attempt to have control over an out of control situation. Spouses often feel like if I just knew everything, every single person, every single move, every single dollar, every single process, everything, had it all in front of me in detail, then I will feel better. And then I'll know where we're headed. And the truth is, spouses, I'm so sorry to say this, but those of you who've had disclosure already know that you can know everything and you still don't necessarily know where things are going and how they're headed, because that has to do with how you grow together as a couple over time. But if someone has said to me, my relationship is over with you, then I'm thinking about separate bedrooms, separate closets. If you have to be together in order to do some kind of financial or temporary situation till you can separate, make it as comfortable as you can. I would want to be around each other as little as possible. Now, I'll tell you the truth about my world. That man I told you about, we talked to each other and we decided that even though we were breaking up and even though we were ending our relationship, we had about 4 months before we could actually separate from where we were living. We chose to sleep together for the rest of that time. And I think that had I been a therapist to myself then, I would have probably said on the outside, don't do that, but there's a part of me that wasn't ready. We said the words, but we still had this physical, emotional connection that went beyond just caring or knowing each other. And so I think that you're grieving. I think that you have every reason to be sad. I think you have every reason to want to go through his stuff, because in there, maybe there's some answer to all of this stuff that doesn't make any sense to you. It wouldn't make any sense to me. But I promise you, there are no answers there. I'm not even sure there are answers. I found my answers 30 years later when I had lunch with a friend last week who said, I don't know if you knew this, but your partner never was with anyone after you. Like, it took me 20 years to get that information. So, I think the best thing you can, if it were me, I would be looking for ways to move out faster, to be separating faster, to go stay with my mom or friends, or, because this is a very painful situation, and you're in a painful situation with a husband who's not really wanting to make it much easier on you. He's not talking about what he's going through. He's not telling you what he's feeling. It doesn't even sound like, from what you say, he's that willing to work on it. So as hard as this is to say, I would, if it were me and me looking back on the old me, I think you need to get out of there as fast as you can and start your life and fully grieve what you don't have. And you know what? I don't know if this man is ever going to want to be with you now or in the future, or his child. He's never going to figure that out while you're sitting around available to him. I'll tell you that. You need to take yourself and your child and go somewhere where you're safe emotionally and physically, and do it as fast as you can, because this is what you're going through is torture. And
Yeah,
I don't think there's another way to go through it. It's torturous.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. And I was thinking also with the snooping, I don't know what kind of support network you have, but I think if I was thinking I want to go snoop, you know, I'd be going, what am I looking for and how am I going to feel afterwards? And is there somebody I can call? Is there something I can do? Because if it's helping you with the grieving process, you know, if it's then, you know, if it somehow helps you, whatever, he's still living under the same roof. But if it's not, if it's just causing you more pain and stirring you up and it isn't really helping anything, then is there something else you can do instead of going and snooping? So, but I'm 100% with Rob. It's like, I think the faster you can separate and not have him physically in the same location with you, you know, the better. But I was thinking too, you know, this could be somebody that just ends up going, I'm just going to look at porn for the next, you know, 50 years. And yeah, and never really attaches to anybody or whatever. So it's unfortunate. I think that's what addiction does, is it just isolates, and somehow that's better than you, a real person and a child.
That's what addiction does, but I think there's another side of it too, Tammy. I think also what happens is that people who are unable to tolerate relationships, who probably will be addictive around them because they can't be in them. And by the way, I feel very sad for your husband. I feel sad for the next question, because I do deeply believe that we're meant to be with other people in relationship. It may not be romantic, but boy, communal living, being with friends and family and part of a community, and it is what is an essential part of being a human being that makes us live longer and have joy, is having people around us that love us, that we love. And so, you know, I think that you're going to have to go out and find that. And right now your job is to love your child. So.
I love yourself too. Okay, the next question. How can I answer to people who push me to resolve my sexual identity when I call, or when to me it can't be solved? This comes up over and over. I identify as homosexual, but I don't believe in having long-term same-sex partner is acceptable. I also know marrying a woman would be a bad idea. I'm in my mid-50s and have never met anyone I would want to bond with, but I considered bonding with either sex is unacceptable. How to explain this to people, counselors, etc.? It's like a brick wall that is impassable, and I feel like people give me hell about it.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of question. There's like 10 questions in that question. But one of the things that struck me was, first of all, you're going to run into people like me who are always going to say we tend to be happier, more successful in relationships. And the people that don't seek them, we question, why wouldn't you seek it? Why wouldn't you seek a situation where you'd be happier and healthier? But that's not true for everybody. I don't hear that you want to be alone, that you don't want to have friends or family or community. I hear that you don't necessarily want to have a partner or pair bond, that you don't necessarily want to pair bond. Good for you. You do not have to pair bond. You do need love and community and support and connection constantly. That's how we are at our best. But first of all, I just read your note. Tammy read your note. And what I heard in that note is, I don't really want to be in a relationship. You know, you said I'm not interested in women. I'm not interested in men. Okay. So, I mean, for committed relationships. So that's how it is. Can you find happiness, fun? You know, every counselor, and we're sort of trained to poke at the dark spots. All you have to say is, I'm not interested in having a committed relationship as an adult. It's not what I'm looking for. What else do you have to say? Men, women, what difference does it make? Now, I don't fully understand your question because I don't know you. And there are many ways to look at your question. You know, I could say to you, on the one hand, gee, it sounds like everybody wants you to look at something you're not willing to look at. Maybe you should take a look at it. Because everybody says the same thing to me over and over again. Maybe I need to pay attention even if I don't want to or agree. So that may be true. There are also people who are absolutely bisexual, and sometimes they enjoy being with women, sometimes they're being with men, you know, and they just are miserable if they commit to either one. So, I mean, for me, it's not a I think what is important here is the challenge of being in recovery and splitting love and sex. Because that's one of the big things of being a sex addict is we will tend to, have love over there or not have any love at all and completely disappear into the sexual behavior. And I think whatever you choose to do, whether you're with a man, you're a woman, you're single, you have to be honest with yourself and honest with other people about what you want, what you're looking for, and how you're living your life. In other words, if you're dating someone and you're, kind of suggesting that something might happen when it won't romantically, that would be a bad thing. If you lead people on by saying, oh, well, maybe we'll fall in love, and that won't happen, that would be a bad thing. If you're only having sex with men and you never talk to them, it's completely casual and physical, and then you have a lot of loving friendships with women, and most of the love you get in your life is with women, that's a problem. Because it's not okay to have sex with people and not talk to them. You're talking about a part of yourself. If you're attracted to man, you're a man. You need to be talking to men you're having sex with. So, what is a relationship? Look, I had a client, and this is absolutely true, probably not much unlike the guy I wanted to be with, but maybe. I had a client years ago who had a lot of challenges with relationships. Let's just put it that way. And he had a lot of anonymous sex for a long time. And actually, my career got challenged around this issue. I wrote something in my book around this. I'll explain. And this was a time maybe 15 years ago where the field of sex addiction was much more conservative, much less based on sexual health, and a lot more based on, I think, marital beliefs, what I want in my marriage, and not necessarily like homosexuality is this and fetishes are that. And, I think we've moved a long way since then. But the idea that people are absolutely going to bond and have a relationship is a really tough one for us to get past. I don't think you have to have that, but one very typical characteristics of sex addicts I think you would need to look at is if you compartmentalize your sexuality from the rest of your life. I don't care if you marry the guys, but you should be able to go on a date with the guy. You should be able to go to dinner with the guy. You should be able to introduce the guy to your friends. In other words, if it's just sex and everything else in your life is over there, that's a problem. It's a problem for you. It's a problem for the people in your life. And it isn't about having a healthy, committed marriage. It's about putting sex and love together, or sex and romance together, or sex and connection together. Because anonymous sex with men is you might as well have a magazine. I mean, it really isn't any kind of real connection. So there are many, many, many questions here. I do agree with you that it's nobody's job to question your orientation. It's nobody's job to question what you want out of life. And at, how old did you? You're 56. We're the same age. You know what you want. You know who you are. I don't think you have to defend that to anybody. The only thing I think is not defensible is if you've taken your sexual life and you've put it over here in a box for nobody to see but you in anonymous or completely casual circumstances, and then the rest of your life is over there. Because that just doesn't sound healthy. And I would say whether you're with a man or a woman, you probably need to have breakfast with them the next morning. You probably need to go to a movie with them. So I was talking about a guy I treated many years ago, and it got my career in trouble, sort of. I want to mention this. So I had the audacity. This particular client I work with, he was our age. He was in his 50s. He had never had a relationship. He'd never really had sex with the same person more than a couple of times. And back then, in the day of sex addiction treatment, the goal was you had to have a monogamous, committed relationship. The answer to sex addiction was getting married. And that was never going to happen for this guy that I worked with. For a lot of reasons related to his history and his childhood, he was never going to have, nor was he going to be able to, or was he interested in having a committed long-term relationship. But when I met him in treatment, he was going to the gym 5 days a week and having casual sex in the shower. By the time we were done working together after 3 years or 4 years, he had 2 or 3 people in his life that he liked, he enjoyed. They'd go to a movie and they'd be sexual. Sometimes they'd spend time with friends, and that was that. But it was someone he knew, and he did something with them before, during, and after. It just wasn't sex. By the way, I got my career in trouble because I suggested that was really good recovery for this guy. And at that time, I was told, like, no, you can't. You have to have monogamy and committed relationships to recover. I don't believe that anymore. But I never really believed it then. But I do believe that you have to be conscious and making clear decisions about your life and not simply going with what feels right. Perfectly. I don't know if I'd give people hell about it. If someone said to me, I really feel like you're missing something by not being in a relationship, or maybe you should try this or try that, You know, you can just say, thank you so much. Do a Brene Brown. Say, you know, some kind of you to care, or, you know, really appreciate your love, or, you know, and then, but it's really kind of a, one of these, but you're saying it real nice, like, thank you so much, you know, but how you live your life is none of their business. Not even a
So
bit.
like the little Southern, bless your little heart.
Bless your heart. Yes.
Bless your little heart.
When they say to you, how do you consider, yeah, you should bless your heart.
Or how nice. Okay.
That's not, okay. We'll make fun of our Southern friends.
No. I found there's so many useful things because they say it nicely. So, okay.
Right.
Next one. Can you please give some advice with regard to couples counseling? We are trying to take steps to moving my stuckness in trauma mode, and my husband, who is doing all the right things with group connection, sobriety, empathy, etc., looking at finding good intensive, but not quite sure how or what to ask the right questions, or a potential counseling provider to make sure this will be a positive experience. Seeking Integrity Los Angeles has a couple's response. I know, but I was just excited. Okay.
Because you have for years taken so many questions from people like this.
Yeah.
If someone called you up and said, you know, just out of the blue, I need because you have better answers to me than this. And I'm thinking about couples counseling. He's kind of stuck. He seems to be really working on things. Maybe we need I don't know what our next steps are. How do we find the right therapist? What do you say to people like this? Because you're better at this part than me.
I always say, I'm so happy to hear that you guys are in this situation because you're making progress. You're looking to make things better. You're working to move forward. I hear your husband is doing the right things with group connection, sobriety, empathy. I hear you taking responsibility for being stuck, and it's you know, so I would take the blame off. You know, it is just where you are, and that is not horrible. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, you call it trauma mode, but so we have lots of fancy names for betrayal trauma, but here's the deal. If someone you love and have been with for many years screws you over, you're going to be hurt and angry for a long time, at least a year. And so I don't even know why you would say you're stuck in trauma mode. I'm glad Tammy brought that up, because you get to feel bad as long as you need to. And you're going to be reactive for a while. And most spouses, in my experience, you're going to be angry and hurt far longer than the man or woman in your life wants you to be angry. Because I know for me as an addict, I've been going to meetings, I've been working on myself, I've been going to, just all those things you said, and I've got 60 days or 90 days of sobriety, maybe 6 months, and I'm feeling really good about myself and excited, and I come home to you, and you're like not so excited I got 6 months because you're thinking about all those women I slept with for all those years. And you're right, and I'm right, meaning I do need people to celebrate my early recovery, but I need sponsors and therapists and people in recovery to do that, because your job is to be angry and hurt. So don't try to talk yourself out of that space. It's an important place for you to be in as long as you need to be there. And sure, we can refer you to a good therapist. If you're talking about intensive work, I think we do some of the best. I think we do some of the best in the country because I've been doing it for 25 years. But we have workshops, we have intensives, we have couples workshops, we have a 3-day reboot, if that's, just want to look at his sobriety. So, and we have colleagues who are doing great work. So finding the work is not hard, and finding the therapist is not hard. I think that your next step is to reach out and ask. We'll give you a whole bunch of recommendations, us and other people. That is the one thing about finding a counselor in this area. People have mentioned CSAT. So one of my mentors, Pat Carnes, has trained people to be certified sex addiction therapists, and that's one route to go down. But there are lots and lots of people who are trained in this work. I think almost most importantly, even more than, here's the questions I would ask a therapist. Are you trained to treat addiction? Are you trained in human sexuality? Because those seem to be the big pieces that are missing in most of the therapists out there that I see. But we're glad to help provide you one, or intensives or anything. Oh, and if you're in Australia, well, I hear they have planes that come here. By the way, we just had a guy here from Japan. I will be in Australia, and I am speaking in Australia in a couple of weeks. So anybody who's in Sydney and around Sydney, right, Tammy? We'll see if we can't get you invited to the talk. Yeah. Tammy?
Yes, do email me. I'm happy to give you. And yes, people come from all over. So, anyway,
and
all right.
By the way, know that if you ask us which program you should go to, we're going to tell you ours, not because we want all of your money, because what we do, but what we really want is I've been doing this Seeking Integrity is a group of people who have come together, like Tammy, like myself. We've been doing this work a long time. The therapists, the managers, everybody who works with us has been in this field, addiction and treatment, for many, many years. And we all know where the good stuff walks and where the BS walks. And so we are working together in this company in an attempt to do the best work that we can therapeutically without ripping people off, without fighting with insurance companies, without, you know, putting up big pictures of fancy yoga and massage. We're just doing really good clinical work. And so, you know, and there are others who do that too, and we're glad to refer you. But if you ask where you should go, we're always going to say, come see us. Absolutely.
Well, and I'm going to give a caveat to that. Yes, I always tell everybody, we don't do everything, because there's places that do 100 different things and have 100 beds, and, you know, it's not us. It's an intentional program, the comprehensive curriculum that you designed in collaboration with Dr. David Fawcett to do excellent work for men who need help with sex addiction and intimacy disorders, or co-occurring sex addiction and chemical dependency. And then the couples workshop is excellent. Paula Hartman, who's been doing the work for decades as well, you know, is doing the 3-day intensive. And you know, it's just one of those things. So yes, there are other people that do it. You know, I just don't, you know, I believe that what you're doing, if it's the right fit for what the program offers, you know, they can't get better help. So I'm going to stay with that. So, okay.
And I want to just quickly go back to the question before. I mean, for the couple before, like a 3-day workshop, some kind of couples workshop where you get to assess, like, where am I in recovery? Where is he in recovery? How do we move forward together? That, and with us or others, I think that since you're not in a raging place, you're not in a chaos place, but you're really moving forward, great time to do a couples workshop and try to plug into what you need to do next.
Yeah. I did put a link to the Seeking Integrity workshop. So if you take a look at that, but always email me. I'm happy to help find resources. Okay. The next question: with both parties in therapy, should the betrayed partner bullet point what they need to have included in a formal disclosure, or should the other party, with the assistance of their therapist, write a full account of the acting out, the period of the behavior, and the associated cost?
I think both are helpful. Mm-hmm. I understand, really, from having worked with enough spouses, that you guys, you know, you're ready for disclosure now. And the addict is sitting there working on an inventory and doing a history and making sure they've got it right. And you're ready for disclosure now. And in fact, you probably have questions right now. So get yourself a journal and write those questions down. Every time you have a question about, well, did you do this? Did you do that? Were you with this person? Were you that person? Write it down. Because hopefully before you do disclosure, you'll have a chance to sit and say, here are all the things I want to look at. And that, just like he's not going to give you a detailed history of everything that's happened in the last 20 years, it's going to be condensed into the issues that are most important for you to learn. You too need to probably take all of those questions and all of that stuff and kind of really winnow it down to what's most important. I don't think you have to figure out what you want to know at a disclosure, because you're going to get disclosure. You're going to hear everything. And if you don't hear it, you're able during disclosure to ask questions. But what I would write down is the questions, so that when you are there, you know, well, I've been wanting to know this for a long time, and then you're in disclosure and get it asked. You're not going to get it asked before. So I would start working on my own list of questions and be working on that with my therapist to get down to what's really important to me. And understand this, that we will never, or a good therapist will never, disclose graphic details. It's never helpful for you to have a picture in your mind of how big the boobs were on that woman, because you'll never get it out of your head. And it's very hard to re-engage with us intimately when you have those images in your head. So we will say, I was with these people, I did these things, I was there for so long, I spent this much, but we don't give graphic descriptions of the sex or of the physicality of it, because that's not what you need to know, even though you may feel like you want to know that too.
And I think, you know, I think ideally, like you said, you know, each of you is working with a therapist. So you and your therapist can discuss and how it's going to be productive for you. And, you know, and it may be a certain detail where you go, I know this person was lying about this date when they said that they were going to be there. And so having that particular date rather than a more general is useful, but really having your therapist support you in having those questions. And ideally, your therapist, in my opinion, is providing his therapist with that, you know, so that they are making sure that they're incorporating it in the disclosure too.
So Tammy's point is well taken. You're asking, how can he and I kind of get the right questions? And let the therapist work on that. They should be communicating with each other, the person you're working with, the person he's working with, related to this issue. They may not interact a lot, but when it comes to disclosure, they both need to have each of your backs and each other's backs. So all of you should be working together around that. Thank you, Tammy.
Okay, next question. How do I respond to family members, siblings who think betrayal trauma and porn addiction is hogwash. How do I respond to his family members who are convinced I destroyed him? His mom said, all men view porn, so this is not even an issue. It's your controlling behavior and mistrust that destroyed this relationship and him.
Okay, but that's his mother. Where do you think this came from? Okay, right? So I would not necessarily look. I was working with the parents of a gentleman recently. This is true, fairly recently, and it's a gentleman who's married and has a wife. But I was talking to his parents because for various reasons, and the subject that came up was that he had told his the woman in his life about his past, about his sexual past. In other words, this man had said to his wife, look, I have not been faithful to a lot of women. I've struggled with being faithful. I don't know if I'm going to be able to be faithful with you. I'm going to try. So before they got married, he told that to his wife. So when he had a slip and he went out and did something sexual that he wasn't supposed to do and they hadn't agreed to, she was pretty horrified and upset. But what happened in the dynamic was that when the parents found out she was so upset, they said, well, look, every man looks at porn. Every man does this once. So what's the big deal? And then the parents said to me, why would anybody tell someone they're going to marry that they cheated on other people in the past? Well, that told me everything I needed to know about his parents. And at least in terms of this, these folks were invested in the lie. These folks were invested in, as long as we don't talk about things and relationship goes on, that's all that matters. Well, that may be fine for people who aren't addicts. They may be able to not talk about things, not deal with things, but we don't have a choice. If we don't get into this stuff, we end up hurting ourselves and other people. So, first of all, I think that if you are feeling unsupported by your family, you're probably going to the wrong people for support. It's the wives and other partners and husbands of other addicts who are struggling with feeling betrayed, where you will feel empathy and support. Your family has an agenda. You know, they wanted you to stay together, or, you know, his mother has an agenda, your mother has an agenda. Everybody's got an agenda. This is one of the reasons why it's great to be a therapist. I don't really have an agenda for you, except I want you to get well. And then if you slept with someone, I'm really sorry. That's created problems in your life, but I don't judge you because I'm not your spouse and it doesn't affect me personally. One of the great things about 12-step programs in recovery, you can get so much support. You get so much from support from those of us who understand that what you did was not okay, and we understand that, you know, you feel bad about it, wish you hadn't done it. We did some of those things too, but we also understand that your spouse is devastated and that they're going to be going through that for a while and all of that, and that you can't turn to these folks for your support. This is one of the hardest things I think about being a betrayed spouse, is that, you know, if your husband or wife had cancer, right? You go to your mom, you go to your sister, you tell everybody, and they would love you and support you. And you know what? If they saw you 3 years from now and the cancer was gone and you were sitting at Thanksgiving, no one would be uncomfortable that you told them he had cancer 3 years ago. They would just all be grateful that he was doing better now. But if you tell your family or his family or anybody's family that this person's been cheating, that's going to elicit a whole different other set of reactions, and it may not be what you're looking for. The places you will find, I mean, Tammy will tell you or type you, we do support groups for betrayed men, for betrayed women on this site every week. It's free. Stop in there. Tell those people how you're feeling. Talk to them about your betrayal trauma. They will tell you have a right to have it. But listen, if there's a little saying about trying to get water from a dry well that we use often in recovery, and I will apply it to this. You as a spouse need a lot of support. A lot of support. You're going through trauma, betrayal, confusion, what's going to happen next, uncertainty about your future. I would only turn to people who could be supportive to me. If I heard those words out of my family, I'd be like, okay, they don't understand. It's not my job to explain it to them. I just need to turn to people who do understand. It's that simple. His mother doesn't get it. I don't think I'd be talking to my husband's mother about his sex life in any case. In any case, why are you talking to your husband's mother about his sex life? Like, think about that. I know, because this is the crisis, but this is not the person to be talking to. So you deserve all the support you need. It's just the places you're going, I wouldn't expect you're probably going to get it. And you run the danger that 3 years from now, if he's doing really well and you're doing really well, you've got to sit at the Thanksgiving table with people who heard every detail of your sex life. And that's not how I want to spend Thanksgiving. So I would be thinking carefully about how you can build a better network of support. And it doesn't matter, every one of you, I want to hear this. There is no, I don't think I deserve the support, or I don't feel bad enough to get the support, or the way I'm feeling isn't right. You're feeling bad, you need support. It doesn't matter whether you're right, wrong, good or bad, you need the support. And if they can't give it to you, we can. And you can find places to get it. You don't have to convince anyone that you deserve to hurt. You just are hurting, and you need people who will come support you. That's it.
I put in the chat the connection for the drop-in group. So the next offering for the Betrayed Partners drop-in group is Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. I don't know if it's Debbie or Brittany who is moderating that group. They alternate. So it's one of those. Please join that. The Pro Dependence webinar will be Friday. Please join that. There's lots of places to connect on Wednesday mornings. We've got a new webinar. There's lots of places to connect.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
One person just came on and said, everybody around me is just blaming me for the pain I'm having with his cheating. And I wrote a bad word, Tammy, I have to tell you. I told this person that they should tell these people to fuck themselves.
Oh.
Because they're not going through what she's going through, and they don't know what her pain is like, and therefore they don't have a right to judge it. Only you know your own pain, nobody else. Can I say one more thing before we stop? I know it's dinner time. I have been fortunate enough to start a podcast. I decided about a year ago that I thought we needed more information on these topics. I wanted more meaty podcasts out there. I started a podcast called Sex, Love, and Addiction. It's now a top 20 addiction health podcast in the United States. It's in the top 100 all over the world. If you are feeling like you want comfort, support, if this kind of dialogue is helpful to you, then I am on there. I have about 45, 50, maybe more podcasts.
It's more than 50, yeah.
With professionals who are talking about healthy relationships and divorce and addiction and recovery and trauma and mental health, all of it. You'll learn more on there than you ever will reading any book if you just sit and listen, and podcasts are free. So I offer that as a gift from us to you, and I hope, and from the many amazing people who've been on those podcasts, and I really hope that you take advantage of them. They are called Sex, Love, and Addiction. And
I put the link in the chat, and somebody posted, I have been listening. It is really wonderful. Thank you for the podcast. I've listened to, I think I'm caught up again now. And it's amazing. They drop. I'm in on the lingo here, you know, they drop on Thursdays, and it's amazing how many people have listened to them pretty immediately. So I know that there are a number of people that have subscribed. So if you're one of them, thank you very much. But he's got some stellar ones lined up for the future too. So there'll be more exciting guests as well. And
I will say, with all due respect, and this is not bragging, it's a reality, because podcast, you know, the social media world, and for you younger people, you'll get this immediately. It's very important. We have over 200,000 downloads of that podcast. And that means that it's not like people downloaded different shows. It means that 200,000 people downloaded the series. And that means they're listening to all of them. And that's very exciting to me, because we're getting to help the world a little bit. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. Thanks for thanks for all you do with those. You're a great podcast host. It's fun to listen to them. So they're always interesting. I always learn something. Good. So
have a great evening.
Thank you all. We'll see you on future episodes. Thank you.
And if you want to reach me, I'm Rob at seekingintegrity.com. Bye, Tam.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good evening.